Welcome back to another episode of the Me and Money podcast. Elliott, how's it going over there?
Let's go well. How about yourself, Matt?
Good. Sounds like we both survived the storms relatively unscathed, and that kind of led to today's topic. So what's the big question we're going to help people with today?
I thought it would be worth exploring, should we file an insurance claim? And obviously, we'll caveat this with it's not advice, but I think a lot of people go to the standard, hey, some damage happened either to my car, my roof, my house, my site, like whatever. There was some damage to some property. My automatic instinct, I think, is to file an insurance claim, right?
Yep. I hope some of the people in my HOA listen to this episode. Because I'm sure
they send it along.
I'm sure passive aggressively, right? I think this is really good, and I think it'll help us just reiterate some of the basics of insurance again. We're probably going to talk more about home and auto this episode, but if you want to go back and listen, I will link to the prior shows that we've done on insurance in the past. So where do you want to start, Elliott? Should we start house, auto? Do you want to start somewhere completely different with just general insurance concepts?
Let's start auto, I think. But I would say if you don't get a chance, I would look up the size of the hail that hit Madison if you're able to, just sort of a fun experience. Because I've never seen hail this big, and I didn't actually see it in person, but I recognize the photo. So if you get a chance, go look at what, like, we're talking baseball, tennis ball sized hail hit Madison.
Yeah. So, and some of the stuff, like one of my clients had, it looked like a spike ball. Like it was like lumpy and the size of a baseball. And I'm sure that did some damage to whatever it hit. So, yeah. All right. Lead us off, Elliott.
So let's say this hail hits your car. I mean, I'm going to the airport on Friday. I know there are some cars there that were damaged. A bunch of windows are caved in and probably some dented. I think this is a good case where a lot of times you probably are going to file a claim just because of how severe it is. But I think there's things to think about before filing a claim. One of them being, how many claims have you filed in the last, call it 3 to 5 years? And the reason I ask that question is the more claims you put on your claims experience, even if you just call and say, and you talk to your agent, for example, as opposed to a broker, and maybe we'll come back to that concept in a second, but you call in and say, hey, I want to report this, or should I file a claim? That could potentially go on your record. And even though it's a $0 claim, if you will, it's still sort of signifying to the insurance company that there's more risk. And if you have, call it 2-3 claims in a 3 to 5 year period, each insurance company has a different way to measure this. They may start to raise your premiums and or drop you entirely. And unfortunately, that claims experience follows you across insurance companies. You have an insurance record as a consumer that you, let's say you apply to company B after being with company A, you go there, they're going to see those claims and think, I'm probably going to charge you a little bit more or a lot more, or I'm not going to offer insurance. So I think that's something to keep in mind that a lot of people don't pay attention to. They just say, okay, it's $1,000. I need to file a claim for that.
Yeah. I would probably agree with that. And I think too, like, just to touch on some of that, with the claims history and claims record and pricing, especially the insurability, I'm not so sure on. But with what happened here in Madison being so widespread, I would be shocked even if you don't file a claim if your premiums don't go up, right? Because it was a large loss event in a relatively condensed area. Like, I'm guessing all premiums in southern Wisconsin are probably going to be going up on your next renewal period. So I think if it's more of an isolated incident, like you specifically are in an accident or you hit someone or someone hit you, like, I think I would use more discretion in that situation because that is specific to you and that's going to be an issue with you. Whereas this, right, it happened. There were probably, I saw something on the news, like 1,700 auto claims were filed, like at the airport alone. Like, that is going to impact your premium probably regardless of what happened. So I think that's just something to think about. And for the people listening, like, you just have to understand how these companies operate, right? Like, they're taking calculated guesses and, using a formula to determine, okay, like, how many losses have occurred in Dallas, Texas versus Madison, Wisconsin. Like, when I moved to Dallas, my car insurance went up double because there's a lot of crime there, a lot of theft, a lot of those things. And they know where things are happening. And that's kind of what they get paid to do in a roundabout way, right?
Yeah. I want to bounce just for a second because you brought up, hey, all this happened at once, ton of claims, right? 1,700 at the airport alone. I think it's also important to remember that us as consumers, what we do also impacts as a group. And I'm going to pick on roofs, for example, because I know I saw on Reddit and other places like roofers were already calling people, hey, you want a free inspection,
I
right?
got an email before the hail even stopped.
Yeah,
Seriously.
exactly. And you're running into a situation now where so many people were getting roofs replaced, and I would say maybe some unethical roofing companies were like basically charging people as much as possible because they knew it was an insurance claim, right? It's very different if someone's paying out of pocket versus the insurance company's covering it. Usually if insurance company's covering it, those expenses are far higher than what someone's paying out of pocket. So what you see now is companies start to put near roof deductibles or higher deductibles, or they've changed their behavior because so many people were filing claims that maybe probably shouldn't have been claimed, and or the expenses were too far out of bounds, but they still covered them. So I think that's important to keep in mind as we educate all of us is, if we're filing a bunch of small claims as consumers, our rates are probably going to go up, right? Or we're going to get new deductibles for certain things, right? I don't know, for my house, there's a specific roof deductible now. It's not part of the normal deductible.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Elliot, and that it does kind of create this like self-sabotaging spiral, right?
Yeah.
Where, oh, well, my insurance just went up 50%, so now I better use it because I'm paying 50% more. And so then you file more claims, and then it screws everyone over even more. And someone's getting rich in the process. And in your example, it was the roofing companies who they're called storm chasers for a reason. Like, this is what they do, right? So I think that's a really excellent point.
Yeah. And your point to like storm chasers, that's a good sort of segue to just stop there for a second to say, go with like research a local roofing company if we're talking about that, or if we're talking about glass and replacing the glass, consider going to a local glass company as opposed to someone that comes in, sets up shop for like a week or two and tries to replace it and maybe charges really high rates because you're going through insurance, right? I think it's on us to be like, how much is this going to cost, right? And is that a reasonable cost, even if my insurance company is covering it?
Yep. And a really big red flag is anyone advertising, if we can get your insurance decision appealed or overturned, like then we get to do your work. That's basically the worst indicator of all. So it sounds like a great thing, but let me tell you, like you're going to pay for it down the road because your premiums are going to go up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
Okay. So you want to segue? You want to segue into auto, or should we stick with home? Like maybe a less severe incident, like, and when does it make sense to file a claim or not?
Yeah. What do you have in mind?
Well, I mean, like, okay, so maybe a few pieces of siding blow off your house, right? Like, is it really going to cost more than your deductible to have a local handyman come out, match it as best as he can to your existing siding? Is it going to look perfect? Probably not. Like, especially if you have vinyl siding that shouldn't be painted, right? Or it's really faded from the sun. But
Yeah.
at the end of the day, you're probably looking at a couple $100 or maybe $1,000 at most to replace a few pieces of siding. And it's going to most likely be far less than your deductible for a standard house. And then you don't have that claim, right? And you can just move on and keep going forward. And again, a couple times, if that happens a couple times over a handful of years, like you're probably still better off than one deductible.
Yeah, because if we figure like, hey, your premiums, let's say they raise 25 or 30%, and that's going to stick with you for 5 years, maybe. You do the
Maybe.
math on what that could be in terms of like, hey, I just paid out of pocket 1,000, but now my insurance premium has gone up over the next 5 years in excess of 3,000 or 2,000 or whatever it's going to be. Like, I think a lot of people forget that and they just look at today's cost, which is unfortunate. And I would even say, even if that expense is higher than your deductible, there can still be scenarios where it makes sense to not go for it, right? Let's say your deductible is 2,000, but something costs $3,000. Well, you're only getting $1,000, sort of out of that above and beyond your deductible. Is that really worth Like, I
Right.
mean, depends on your personal financial situation, absolutely. But I think a lot of people have the means to pay for this a lot of times, but just file a claim because they're told to file a claim.
Yeah. And I think too, it goes back to why it's important to have an emergency fund and intentionally set aside some money, right? There's the 1% rule, or a new one I've heard recently is like $1 per square foot, but that seems a bit low.
That does seem a
uh,
bit low.
yeah.
That seems about like, that'd be like what, 0.5%? I'm just, yeah, thinking about my own house.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think I'll probably do more than $2,000 worth of work to my house in a year. But um anyways, it's one of those things where if you're just budgeting for this stuff, like that budgeting and saving is self-insurance, right? You can look at it as that, and then you kind of are the insurance company in that standpoint. Like, are our losses better or worse than expected? And the same thing happens, right? If an
Yeah.
insurance company's losses are worse than expected, they raise premiums. If it's better than expected, I don't know if they go so far as to lower premiums. They're just going to make more money. But I do think there is some degree of they do have to make adjustments if losses aren't what they expected.
Yeah. A lot of
Yeah.
times, like, I guess with different insurance products, sometimes you get a return of premium or a dividend or something like that, depending on it. You don't see that in home and auto, but,
Right.
um,
Right.
you see less of an increase maybe in the future.
But just think of having, a house fund or something like that. Like that is self-insurance, and rather than the insurance company being able to pocket the money, like you get to, right? So
Yeah.
I don't think that's a bad way to approach it either.
No. And I think this is really, I alluded to this earlier, but I think this is really important where you work with an independent insurance broker as opposed to a captive insurance agent. And the definition being here, a broker can shop many different insurance carriers. They're not beholden to one. And they're working on your behalf, not the insurance companies. Whereas a captive agent is working on behalf of the insurance company. And those two distinctions are really important because you get to call your independent broker and say, hey, my siding just fell off. I think it's going to be $1,000. What do you think about filing a claim? Is that a good choice or not? And they can walk you through that without it going on your insurance record. Whereas if you call up your captive agent and you have that same conversation, it's probably going on the record.
Yep. I would agree 100%. Yeah.
So and just like small story time, I don't know if I revealed this. Like my car had some damage. I slid down my driveway during a snowstorm, and it, like, my mailbox, super sturdy, but it put a gash through the entire side of my driver's side car. I was able to call my independent broker and say, hey, this happened. I got some quotes for it. I'm not quite sure if it makes sense given our claims history to do that. And I decided not to. Now, it wasn't an expense I really wanted to pay for, but I think it made more sense than potentially raising our insurance premiums. And it wasn't that much higher than our deductible. So
Yeah.
that's sort of a real life story where that can come in handy.
Yeah. No, I think it's good, and it's always good to have more people in your corner, right? Obviously, like an insurance broker still makes money, but they're not making money from the company that they're only selling insurance from, right? And I think that's the big difference, and it's why you and I chose to be independent in our fields too. Like, it's not to say we can't go use products at some of those firms that sell those products and have people selling those products, but I'd rather be safe than sorry.
Yeah,
Right.
it's not the option. It's not the only option, right? If we think about a tool belt, we can have any type of hammer in there or screwdriver or whatever.
Yeah. And
Not just
often they
one.
have access to the same companies. Like, it's kind of one of those things where it's hard because you don't want to step on relationships, but at the end of the day, like, if your friend is your friend, they're not going to stop being your friend if you don't buy your insurance through them. And if they don't continue to be your friend, were they ever your friend? Like, I don't know. It's just a tough thing sometimes, but
Yeah.
I always think it's good to at least be informed, make informed decisions, and go from there.
Yeah.
All right, so let's pivot to auto. This one's a little different because I think there's, like, what can really happen to a house is, and like file a claim on it is very different than a car, like short of, I guess, like blowtorching your house down and being an arsonist, right?
Took a morbid turn.
So yeah, I mean, auto, I would again agree with just like how you started with your story, Elliot, like if it's a self-inflicted wound on the car, like probably having the independent person or at least getting some quotes first is the right way to go about it. If you're involved in an accident and you're at fault, I think that changes a little bit because you're going to want to get your story, get it straight, and make sure that that's on file before anyone else, submits their own story. I kind of have a personal story on this one where 2 years ago I think it was 2 years ago now. I was like going to get coffee and there was someone backing out of a spot and the person behind them panicked and backed into the front end of my car. And she was like, oh, like, we don't even need to file a claim. Like, here, just like, I'll pay you cash or whatever. And I'm like, no, like, you were totally at fault. And so I called my insurance like immediately before I left the parking lot, told them my story. And then by the time I had called her insurance, she had submitted a completely different story. Like, and of course, it being a non-life threatening incident, like, the police weren't going to come. There was no police report to rely on. But since I got that in first, and then my insurance company was pressing on their claims adjuster, and then the claims adjuster from the other insurance company like started pressing on the driver, and then her story wasn't adding up. And so, like, just having that on file immediately and explaining the situation before, there could be any murkiness added to it. Like, anytime there's another party involved, I think you should always initiate a claim and at least get it on record before you really go too far, because there's a lot more that can happen when someone else is involved.
Yeah, that's also a good example of why you might want a camera too for your car.
Yeah, 100%.
It's a he said, she said, or she said, he said, so forth.
Among other auto incidents, I think having a dash cam isn't a bad idea these days.
Yeah, it's really easy to dispute that. And I think that's another sort of mitigation tool that's not necessarily insurance, but if you ever need to file a claim, it's pretty easy to see the evidence of what happened when you have one of those.
Yeah. And also like talk to, like, if there's any witnesses around, like try to get any corroboration of what happened. And like in certain states, you can just record that conversation and you don't need to have consent. But that's another thing. Like, just understand if you live in a 2 consent state, like you may need to have the other person's consent to record them. I know Texas is like that. But I think those are just things that we don't think about too often that can go a long ways in helping prove your case, because people will be nasty because they certainly don't want to pay for it and they don't want their insurance to go up either. So yeah, but let's get into more of the nuance thing. Like, let's go to like your car example was great, but what about like people who had their windshield blown out from this hail? Like, how would you approach that situation?
I think if it was just the windshield, I would probably try to get it replaced, because I think you can replace it for near what most people's deductibles are or slightly more. I think there's a unique case where I saw some cars where basically every panel on the car was destroyed or dented because the hail came down, in which case, right, I'm assuming the car is probably getting totaled at that point because it doesn't make sense to replace it, or I think it'd be very expensive just on the damage I saw in my car to replace panels. But I think that's a unique case. But I think it's like, hey, if a rock, let's go with rock hits the windshield, right? Yeah. Cracks the windshield, probably paying out of pocket for that, because I don't know if you necessarily want to claim to replace a windshield that, I don't know, $500 to $1,000 depending on the type of windshield and whatnot. To me, that's probably going to raise your premium more than just paying out of pocket, would be my guess.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think this is a more of a nuanced thing. I see a lot of policies now that come with $0 glass deductibles. It's almost like the insurance companies like don't care about that as much. Like, and to them, like, it's not an overly, it's not like a tens of thousands of dollars of replacement. Like, it's like you said, it's a relatively small thing. So I kind of see it like almost as like the dental insurance equivalent of like a line item on a car, where like their losses are pretty calculated. Like, more often than not, you're spot on. Like, it's going to be the front windshield because that's where the rocks are going to hit you. So I think if you have like a $0 glass deductible, I might approach that differently, because that is like, $1,000 saved potentially. But otherwise, I think I'd generally agree with you. I think too, what really goes into this too is like the age of the car and like what your end goal is with the car. Like my car, it's a 2010 Yaris with 200,000 miles on it, right? Like, was I really upset that that lady didn't have to replace the bumper cover on my car? No. Like, I was just hoping to get a check, honestly,
Sure.
and like put it in the bank.
It's total.
Yeah. But it's one of those things where I think that's a really good time to think about like, oh, like, is this a critical repair, right? Like, in your case with your car, there was exposed metal. I
Yeah.
remember actually talking to you about this. Like, is there exposed metal or is it
It's
just
gonna
like,
rust.
yeah. If it's plastic, like maybe it's not a big deal. Like, because if you replace, it's gonna have to be totally replaced if it's plastic. They're probably not gonna buff that out and paint it, right? They're just gonna rip it off and put a new one on. So in that case, like I think it's just understanding what is actually damaged on the car and is it integrity, like is the integrity of the car compromised? And if not, like I probably wouldn't even bother filing a claim.
Yeah. And I just want to remind people too, I think it also depends on how many claims you have, right? Like I'm approaching insurance a little bit differently these days of I really only want high value claims because I've seen policies where there are very minor claims and now insurance is like doubled. I saw that on someone's home where there were two minor things before they actually owned the home. They had a major water issue, which maybe that impacted things, but I think it was the total too.
Yeah.
And then it was like, I looked at the premium, I was like, why is this so expensive? Like it was baffling to me because it was almost double. So I think that's important to keep in mind as you file for like a, even if it is a $0 windshield claim and or like the one I always advise people to be very cautious about is the towing, that sort of thing. Like car breaks down, you may have towing available on your insurance, but is your insurance company going to count that as a claim? And do you really want something for $250 to make it back a few miles?
And that's where I typically tell clients, like, get rid of it on your auto. And if you really want that peace of mind, go get AAA. Like,
Sure.
AAA has a lot of really cool, like, side benefits. Like, you can even get a gym membership discount. Like, I'm saving $40 a month on my gym membership because I'm a AAA member, which more than pays for the AAA itself. So it's like, there's things like that too, where I agree with you, right? Like, you kind of want to separate your relationships on some of those things where you don't want the history of one relationship to impact the history of the other, right?
Yeah.
So
for sure.
No, I think that's great. Yeah, what else? What else insurance wise?
Those are the main things I have. I think I don't know if you have anything, but for me, it's really just let's analyze our own insurance history, how many claims we've had, what's our financial situation in terms of being able to cover this out of pocket? Do we need to adjust it like you had talked about, right? Are we setting aside 1% of the home value per year? Or if you have an older home, maybe 2 or 3% to cover things like a new roof or siding or windows or whatever that is when either storms happen or just wear and tear.
Yeah. The way that you said that, it kind of made me think like there are a lot of similarities in how people use all of their insurances. Like I think some people use and abuse their health insurance, like for things where it's like, it's not really like I have a headache, so I'm going to go to urgent care. Like it could be something serious, but it's probably not. And I think a lot of home and auto claims are, they're kind of treated the same. Like you're trying to use an emergency tool as a band-aid, and you should look at those insurance policies as emergency tools to prevent, like you said, large number of claims or catastrophic losses, not necessarily like as, I dropped my phone and the screen broke and now I want a new phone.
Yeah. And I saw some people online too get excited about, oh, I can get a free roof replacement. And then someone below the comment was like, hey, is your roof like 20 years old? Well, they may not be replacing anything because it's sort of hit the lifespan of the roof. And now you've just filed a claim, increased your premium potentially, put a claim on your record, and you're not really getting anything out of it. So, and I don't fault people. I think it's really hard to understand the fine print of insurance. I mean, I don't even fully understand everything, but having talked with brokers in the past, I have a probably better understanding than the average person. So I think that's where you have to lean on your agent or your broker to better understand what does your policy actually cover and what makes sense.
Yeah. And I think that's the final plug for the broker. Like the advantage to them being able to see several insurance companies, this is what they do all day. Like
Yes.
they know who has the best policies on roof replacement. They know who has the best terms. It probably won't be the best price, but if you're shopping for your insurance based on price, you're probably always going to be disappointed. Like,
yeah, when you go to file a claim.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Like you just pay for it in a different way.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is a good reminder too. Like, don't, and I think that is the problem. And I'm not saying our listeners do this, but you should not be looking at your insurance as like an opportunistic thing that is going to save you money on replacing your roof. It may temporarily, but we had the same thing with our condo. Like the premium for our whole association, just for the exterior parts of the building, it went up like 150% after we had the roof claim, right? So it went from $6,000 a year to like $13,000 or $14,000 a year. And yeah, we didn't have to pay for the roof, but if you stretch that out over 5 years, I don't think we're going to come out ahead. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. At best, break even.
Perfect example.
Yeah. So I think this is good. Just food for thought. Again, I know we're biased because we're independent people and we like working with independent people, but I'll leave Olivia. That's who I usually send my clients to. And I think I don't know if that's who you work with, but I think she's a great resource and she'll never pressure you to do anything. I know that. So
yeah, that's great, Matt.
All right. We'll wrap this one up. Hopefully everyone survived the storm. And if you're not here in Wisconsin, feel fortunate that you didn't have, spike ball hail landed on you. So see you next time, Elliott.
Stay safe.